get started. So we'll call the meeting to order. We will start with a roll call. So Anderson,
Here.
Bork,
Here.
Gade, Grimm, Harrelson here, Krylov,
Here.
Murray,
Here.
Shetty,
Here.
Silman, Smith,
Here.
and Traer.
Here.
And members of staff that are present.
Sarah Gardner present.
Wonderful. So first things first, can I get a motion to approve meeting minutes from last time, or any comments on the minutes?
I move they be approved.
Shetty seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Alrighty, so, and Silman has joined the meeting. So then on to announcements and reports.
All right, we had a couple action items from the last meeting. The first was to prepare a report of the CAP building section for all our actions to date, which you all received in that email from me. And then also to arrange for possible tour dates of the landfill. As you know, that was set for April 21st. Apologies again for the snafu in the email. But I'm very pleased to report all 5 slots were filled and we've got a wait list going. So if you have an interest in touring the compost facility and you haven't had a chance to reach out to me, feel free to do so. We will find a way for everybody to get there sooner rather than later. And then, as I noted in the email, and you'll see this on the next time, we're just limited to 5 commission members, and that's to prevent running into any issues with public meetings law or having a quorum. So when you're on the tour, and I will be there to help with this, you're welcome to ask any kind of questions you want about the compost facility, anything else. We'll just make sure that we keep all commission-related business otherwise out of the conversation. Even though we don't have a quorum, we just want to make sure everything's on the up and up in that gathering. So nothing to stress about. It'll be good. And then in terms of upcoming events, as you know, we have our Neighborhood Energy Blitz coming up at the end of the month on April 26th. We are a little shy of volunteers from where we normally are at this time of year. So if you have an interest in participating and would like to sign up, please do feel free to reach out to Megan Hill or myself. In particular, we're a bit light on afternoon volunteers, which both shifts are very fun. I think the afternoon shift is especially so. It's a little shorter than the morning shift. I know we've got down here 2:30 to 5:30. You will not be there until 5:30. We just put that there to be safe. But the afternoon shift, you get to pick the boxes back up. They often come with thank you notes and sometimes homemade cookies. So it's a good one to sign up for. But of course, we will take your help in the morning as well if anybody would like to participate.
Could you repeat the date?
Yep. It is April 26th, and the morning shift is from 9 a.m. to noon, and then the afternoon shift is 2:30 to 5:30, and that is a Saturday event. And if you know others who might be interested, I shouldn't put all the weight on you signing up personally. If you have friends or neighbors, it's always a really fun event. Feel free to recommend they get in touch to sign up as well.
And I'm assuming, this is Murray, I'm assuming that they will need a car to drive around and pick things up, or are they?
Nope, it's a walking tour.
Oh, okay.
We have city vehicles that follow along to carry the materials, so people come to the vehicles and gather up like 3 or 4 boxes and then go out and put them on doorsteps and then come back. And we have a nice walking pace for everyone,
Okay.
so it's a good way to get some steps in too, if nothing else. Any other questions? All right. And then does anybody have other events they'd like to announce for the community?
I think I might announce an event that, with support of UI Sustainability, myself and then 2 of my friends are hosting a Learn to Bike Commute event on April, and it's that Monday after the 28th? Monday the 28th at noon. I guess Brenda probably knows the location better than I.
It's in the Tippy Pomerantz building, but I don't recall the room number.
I can't remember either. But if you're interested, I'd be happy to share that information. And it's open to the public, so we'd love for people who are interested in biking for transportation to join us for a little Learn How event.
And I'll just say that should be on our Earth Month hub through the university also. And last month I did mention our Miyawaki Forest tree planting event, but you all should have a little flyer, and for those, I can pass them out to anyone else that's interested. We're planting 4,000 trees, and the kickoff is on Arbor Day, which is April 25th. We have several planting days scheduled that are on the flyer for rain dates, or if we don't have no idea how long it will take to plant 4,000 trees, so we will let everyone know. You can go to this QR code and register, or go online and register, and then you'll also find out about a celebration that we're having on the following Friday, which is May 2nd. That will be in the evening, so the community can come too, and it will feature Songlines Community Sing, so that will be a great event too, to sort of in reverence of the planting of the forest. We'll have some community singing to go along with that. Also on the back of this flyer, I wanted to mention we're having a city nature challenge, which is basically a way to encourage people to get outside. And we explain how to download an iNaturalist app, and then you can go outside and you can find out what species of plants or trees, or if you see any kind of bugs, you can take pictures and identify it through that. And the challenge is a worldwide challenge, and Johnson County sort of has a region. So if you're within Johnson County, the app will automatically note where you are and what you're seeing. So all of the data is collected. So it's a fun way to just encourage people to get outside and do something over the weekend.
Such great events. Earth Month is always so exciting. Does anybody else have an Earth Month event to share? Great. Well, then the next item, we're going to circle back to Angie Smith to give us an update on the comprehensive plan update process.
Yes, so on March 10th, the steering committee met, and we met for 90 minutes, and it was a very informational-heavy meeting where a lot of data was given by the consultants. Basically, the theme, they were talking about how the city uses land. And so the beginning of the presentation talked a lot about transportation and how we use our transportation, and then it talked quite a bit about housing. One of the things I thought was interesting was they used an app that tracked like cell phone data to see how people walk or bike or car drive, how they commute, and so they were using that data to support some of their inferences and stuff that they made. So I don't know if we would have access to that, because I know we talked about the ACS and our own survey, but I'm curious how our survey and their data might compare. So the basic theme of the whole meeting was, with all their data they've collected, when we make a comprehensive plan, we're thinking about this year, but also in the next 10 years and beyond. And so by 2050, they predict that the city of Iowa City's population will be 95,000 people. And there's interesting statistics about that, but half the population will be aged 20 to 44. And then based on how many houses and how many what we could really house, currently, we're going to need to be building 350 units per year to be ready for that population growth over time. And so in all of their information, how is the land that the city already has allocated? So we have quite a bit of our city we can't build houses on the Pentecrest or whatever, because a lot of it is already owned by the university. And so based on what land we already have, they're also really talking about how do we have enough space for our predicted population growth was basically the main theme of the whole presentation. But it had quite a bit of data on what kind, the jobs that people have when they live in Iowa City, the public land that we wouldn't be able to build on. Floodplains and steep slopes make for not great housing, so that impacts some of our land use. But we have a great steady population growth, and we just need a plan for it, basically. And so, do we need to buy more land or annex land, or, and then how do we get financing and all the questions that come with all of that. And so the next steering committee meeting will be in July, but there will be public engagement. And so obviously, I'll let Sarah and you all know when public engagement begins, but it hasn't started yet. But I'm really excited to see what the public has to say, like as they're going to be collecting the public's, opinions on transportation and housing options. And one of the statistics they looked at was the average asking price on a home sale right now is $555,000. 6 months ago, the average housing cost was $365,000. So that one kind of jumped out at me too. I don't know if that's in relation to Match Day was March 21st, and so I don't know that with the hospital and the hospital's recruitment, how that would, but anyway, that seemed to be quite a bit of a big jump on home sale average prices, and so thinking about affordable housing options as well. But yeah, we have to figure out how we're projected to have this really great population growth. Yeah.
Quick question, can you repeat the time scale that they said? What was the
Oh, by 2050,
2050?
yeah, we should have, our population will be 95,000. Mm-hmm.
It just, when you said 25 to 40 years old?
Oh, yeah, so the half of the population will be age 20 to 44 at that time. The median age is 26, one of the youngest median ages they were noting. Yeah, a 9% vacancy rate in our housing right now, which just does make finding housing difficult sometimes. Yeah. I took pictures of some slides too, yeah.
This is Anderson. I just have a quick question. When are you guys, so you're in the early stages of this process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Developing the comprehensive plan. There's the public engagement part of it coming up. When is it going to be finalized? What's the timeline?
Yeah, if I can remember right, I think it's a year and a half.
Okay.
So it will take a good, and we just started January, so probably, yeah, summer of 2026, maybe it'll be having some sort of final, yeah.
What's the breakdown of age right now?
Ooh. I did take pictures of some of these slides. I could probably get that to you. I don't know if I could find it easily on my phone right now. If I recall, they were trying to talk about that because I think we had a discussion about that and whether, our university population, does that impact our median age and different age, and I feel like they might have even said that the college population wasn't really even included in some of the data they were reporting, and so that wouldn't really have impacted why our age is younger.
There are
But-
a lot of people that I know who came here to retire.
Mm.
So there are a lot of retired, and there are a lot of retirement homes in the area, and I was just curious whether they're just expecting everybody to die out by that point. And nobody able to come here to retire, so a young population.
I don't remember, we didn't talk about retirement population, wasn't, we were talking about the other end and how that impacted our numbers, yeah.
It's just an interesting picture for me.
Well, a lot of reasons why we think Iowa City's a great place to live,
Right.
yeah. It draws a lot of people.
So Angie, I'm just curious what your thoughts were during this process as a member of the Climate Commission, what opportunities you see in that room for us as a commission to weigh in and offer a climate angle. I can imagine just sitting here, listening to you talk about the housing issue, like I'm leaning forward in my seat because, I mean, the conversation that everyone is going to be having is, yeah, that urbanization and so on, populations are going to increase by 2050 across the board. You know, it's like there's all these reports predicting that. And I mean, it's an unavoidable piece of the conversation. So I feel like it's a unique opportunity for us as the commission to come in and say, like, well, what are you going to do about affordable housing then? Like, yeah, what are you going to do about the housing situation? Because $550,000 average housing price, that's not going to cut it, you know? And obviously, like, we're just a little old climate commission over here, but like, if we can contribute to that conversation in some way, I'm just curious, like, if you have thoughts about that. Or
Yeah.
if anybody else here does.
Well, during the meeting, it was really mostly like a lot of information was just bombarded at us. So we didn't really have a lot of time during this meeting to offer input. I did after the meeting, I sent a follow-up email about housing, and, because I had made a comment about dense urbanization in our downtown area is great, but it doesn't attract all people who don't want to live in the college party scene, and whether we need to have other dense living opportunities. The 15-minute walkable city is something that's described a lot. So I did have a follow-up email that I just wanted to clarify some of my thoughts and just make sure that that I was communicating clearly. But a lot of the commission is made up of affordable housing people, so obviously they know our current statistics and data on how hard it is to get housing right now in our community. But that's why I'm also really eager to hear the public input, and that's why I'd love for everybody to also just make a really big effort to attend the public engagement meetings, because, yes, I will be talking about, as you all know, I care about transportation and biking, and but climate, and so these are all important things that we know that when we have a 15-minute city, it does help impact climate and planet. So yeah, I'm hoping everybody participates in the engagement.
When is that again?
Yeah, we don't have a date yet. Yeah, but I'm definitely, as soon as I start hearing when the public engagement is, I'm going to be pushing it out to all the people that I know too, because I want their voices represented. Yeah.
I mean, I'll just add to that, we're in a privileged position. Not every board and commission has a representative on the steering committee, but it was a priority for the city that a representative of the Climate Action Commission be included for exactly this reason, so that Angie can be conveying a climate perspective all throughout the discussion, and she can be providing these updates back to you all as a body, so that you can be thinking about comments you would like to have conveyed either through Angie or in the public engagement process. So we're really lucky to get these updates.
Thank you for doing that, Angie.
Yeah.
Angie, I have a question. Did they attribute this, growth to any specific elements, or what kind?
How did they come up with the projected? I mean, I guess I can't remember specific details, right? But I think it is based on there were graphs about how it has been growing, and they talked about, like in 2008, the recession and how that impact our college population will likely drop in a few years because birth rates decreased at that time, and how to account for that. So I don't remember specifics. It was a month ago.
Yeah, I know, it was, well, that was, the knowing what's happening in the, college admissions and how we keep talking about, that it's going to be going down. That was one of the things that made me curious, because the growth is in, there's big growth in the younger age group,
Right.
and we know that probably admissions are going to be going down. So I was kind of curious, like.
Yeah, they accounted for that, yeah, when they talked about it, but it is interesting how they collect all this data, yeah.
Thanks for the excellent update.
Thanks, Angie. Well, let's keep on moving. We'll go to old business. And we have a presentation, I think, on the Resilience Hub pilot.
Yeah, I'm going to bring those slides up and then invite Dr. Tamara Marcus and Audrey Wiedemeyer up to talk about these efforts. And those of you who've been with us for a while may recall, we had a presentation last year on the Resilience Hub planning process for neighborhood centers of Johnson County. This is a presentation on the planning process for the bike library. You're good to go.
Hello, Commissioners. I'm Audrey. I've been the director at the Bike Library for going on 7 years now. Nice to see some familiar faces, but a lot of new faces. And it's good to be in front of you all today. So thanks for having us. We were founded 20 years ago and have grown through resourcefulness and generous donations of bicycles over those last 2 decades. With the city's help, we've gotten free lodging for the first 10 years. We've gotten free bikes through Iowa City PD Impound. And we've gotten a handful of smaller grants that have helped us to develop our programming in the early stages as we started to do more outreach programming, and then also to help us knock off some low-hanging fruits that are related to sustainability upgrades that we've been making to our building. So in the last decade, we've transitioned from a all-volunteer-run organization to a fully staffed nonprofit. We have 5 full-time staff right now. And we have also, in the past 5 years, acquired a permanent home for the organization, which we have started making sustainability upgrades on with the help of some small grants. In May of '24, we launched a $1 million capital campaign to strengthen our impact. We have 4 different initiatives that are part of that campaign. Pay off our mortgage, redo the outdoor space into a dual purpose education and community third space, invest in vital youth programming, and then to go solar and get to as close as carbon neutral as possible. So I'm happy to say that as of today, we are at about $575,000 pledged to this campaign. Yay. And in the next 6 months, we aim to raise $225,000 or get $225,000 more pledged before we go public with the campaign. Do we have a slide change?
You want the next one after?
Yeah, sure. And the next one. So our mission is simple. It's to get more people on bicycles. Our vision, though, is to empower people to make biking a primary form of transportation in our community. And that's kind of a mouthful of things, but we have really honed in on how we mentor and work and get education to people through our programming that the city has helped us to develop too in the last couple years. We refurbish about 1,000 bikes a year. We get 2,000 bikes donated every year. And then we get bikes out to community members and back out on the streets through 15 different socially conscious programs. So you can check out a bike, you can buy a bike, you can bring a bike in that someone gave you and fix it up, and we'll show you how to do it for free. You can show up for 6 rides if you're a mom, and we'll give you a free bike. You can earn a bike if you're a teen and you want to fix up your own bike over the course of 3 weeks. You can get a bike through us through a shelter house and DVIP voucher program that we have if you need transportation to work. So there's lots of different ways that we're meeting people where they're at. These programs that we do, these 15 different programs, provide mechanical education and mentorship specifically. So we break things down for people so that they can make the most of the bike that we get them, whether they have put money into it or time into it, and can enjoy the city's trails and the infrastructure that we are working on getting in place in the bicycle master plan. Because it's one thing to get a bike and it's another thing to feel empowered to choose it as your primary form of transportation, or choose it when you are biking or transporting yourself or your family for short trips around town under 2 miles. So that's what our aim is, to help people to choose the bike as their primary form. And so we're really grateful to be a part of this network of nonprofits also that are that we work with to do this kind of work. We have a lot of community partnerships that we've grown that help us reach people from all different backgrounds.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tamara. It's good to see a lot of you guys again and some new faces as well. As Sarah said, so this is the second organization that we've gotten to work with. I'm one of the owners of Empowered Solutions Collective. We're a Cedar Rapids-based, equity-centered, strategic planning organization that helps other organizations do this type of work. And so it was really an honor to work with Neighborhood Centers of Johnson County first, and now the Iowa City Bike Library and Audrey to continue realizing this vision in the city of Iowa City and eastern Iowa. So thanks to the city of Iowa City and all of you for making that possible. So if you don't, actually I'm gonna do a little quiz since this is the second time I've been here. What are resilience hubs? Do I have a commissioner that will volunteer and answer without looking at the screen? I see you, Angie, don't look at it.
Am I the only one getting picked on? Yeah. No, but I think resilience hubs are fabulous, obviously. I mean, not just in a climate event, but all sorts of events, being a community place where you can go to get support. But during climate events, being a place that you could go for communication, safety, water, shade. We've talked about that heat-related climate events are one of the more common problems. So being a community place where you feel welcome and you can go get assistance in these situations.
Nailed it. And are these the same thing as disaster shelters?
Oh, yeah, no, I would say they're different.
They're different.
Yes.
Anyone, another commissioner maybe wants to identify a key difference? Don't be shy.
Operate year-round.
Yeah, right.
Looked it up.
Oh, you nailed it. Okay, you cheated a little bit, but it's okay. You shouldn't have told me that. I didn't know. Exactly. So it's not just a disaster location, right? It's not just activated in a disruptive event, but it is an everyday, all year round, well-known, trusted community center, rooted within the community, right? Do you know why we chose, or why the Iowa City Bike Library was selected for that? Based off of what Audrey was just saying, it's a perfect location for a resilience hub, right? It's a known entity that's been around, that's trusted by the community, that's helping its residents not only become educated, but access critical resources to make them more resilient. Yes, in disruptive events, but in the everyday too. Next slide, please. And so there's 5 foundational key areas. I mentioned these last time, but just to reiterate, so it's a little cut off at the beginning, but services and programs. So these hubs are offering services and programs. You heard about the 15 different programs that are offered by the Iowa City Bike Library and how those programs help them realize their mission and vision. So again, check that. Iowa City Bike Library checks that box in terms of being a great location for a resilience hub. Communications, they are consistently communicating with the people they're both directly servicing and also looking to expand their service reach too. And so getting that information, yes, as it relates to bikes and transportation, but also other resources such as access to services such as food support for those experiencing food insecurity. I know you've had some conversations with the labor center as well, so thinking about job access component and how, again, that information is getting to the individuals that they're serving. Building and landscape, so Audrey mentioned sustainability upgrades to the building, right? So as we've talked about before, resilience hubs are not just infrastructure focused, it's also about that social resilience, that social infrastructure too. That social and that building and landscape piece is going to be important. And so we'll share a little bit about kind of what emerged from the planning process as it relates to buildings and landscapes. Power, also key, right? I don't feel like I need to touch on that because you all are not in your heads, like you know why that's important. And then, of course, operations. So Audrey mentioned that they have 5 full-time staff, right? So that's staff personnel, as well as that volunteer and community support to help realize those programs and services that organization is providing. So again, I think it's pretty clear based off of these key 5 foundational areas why the Iowa City Bike Library is such an excellent location for Iowa City's second official resilience hub. Next slide, please. That all just says the same thing, and you guys are already experts. This slide was really just to reiterate, they're not the same thing as disaster shelters. They do different things, but you guys get that. And so, Audrey, I know I said a little bit about why Iowa City Bike Library is so great, but any additional comments about, why you feel like this organization is so connected to the Resilience Hub model?
Yeah, I feel like we were planning to be a resiliency hub before we knew what resiliency hubs were. And in working with Tam, it's been great to learn what a resiliency hub is, because it's taken a while to wrap our heads around like what exactly that is. The way we engage with the public is truly unique. We don't take it for granted that through the lens of the sustainable, friendly bicycle, we're able to connect with people in a way that is fun and also empowering. So yeah, we're established as a known and trusted resource in the community. For example, our teen program, Outspoken Teens, that we are investing more in with this capital campaign is unique because we are getting, hopefully, essential in helping teens build essential life skills through the lens of the bicycle. So they come in, they get to pick out a bike, they get to work on it for 3 weeks, and they get mechanical mentorship. Maybe they've never picked up a wrench before. Maybe someone's never given them the space to fail in a project. We have public benches with lots of tools and lots of, as long as people have the patience, or as long as people have the time, we have the patience. Because in learning a new skill and especially doing repairs, there is a lot of failure involved, and just giving people that space and teens that space to figure things out and problem solve. At the end of it, they get a bike and they get the freedom that comes with having a bike. But, working with, for example, UAY is one of our community partners. Tony Branch and I have worked together for over a decade to help empower kids through the lens of the bicycle. There's lots of conversations that can happen one-on-one with a mentor and a teen in those micro interactions. And so getting to work with people like Tony and Dustin and the people that ran the Sparks program to help guide some of those conversations is really unique. And we don't have to bring them up in a way that's, we can bring them up in a way that's more of approachable through the bike. So that's just one example of like how our programs are pretty unique. And how we can engage with lots of different people from different backgrounds. Before we had staff, we regularly had to turn people away. But now we're able to serve just about anybody who walks through our doors, which is exciting. And yeah, I feel like we forget to mention that we just offer affordable transportation. The barrier to having a bike, a nice bike, a reliable bike, and information and education on how to use it, to make the most of it, is kind of high sometimes. Bikes can be expensive. An entry-level bike is about $700 new if you want to get a quality bike. And so we're reducing the cost barrier and also the information barrier. And then, yeah, like Tam said, we want to be a hub for lots of different information. Lots of people come to us for bicycles, but they come to us in sometimes in a crisis mode too. They're looking for additional resources, housing, food, transportation assistance, And we can't provide all of those things, but we can provide a space where all of the information is in one place, and we can help guide them to other organizations that are doing the kind of work that they need help with. We host a lot of really fun community events, which is another way to just engage with the public. And so, you know, we hope that that is a gateway into the biking lifestyle. So we have regular weekly events, and we also have larger community events. And we would try to make our space as welcoming as possible to diverse groups, especially youth and teens and people on the margins, because going into a bike shop, a traditional bike shop, or that kind of like just shop mechanical space in general, is sometimes pretty intimidating. So we're trying to make it as welcoming as possible.
And so, you know, we kind of came up with this like spoken wheel metaphor because, you know, it's the bike library. And so you kind of have the Iowa City Bike Library as the central hub, right? It's the staff, it's the volunteers. And these spokes are kind of, or sorry, the hub is the location. The spokes are the staff and the volunteers and the community members, and that wheel of influence or wheel of impact is that impact that the organization has on the community. So it was just kind of a way for us to visualize, conceptualize a resilience hub concept, which, as Audrey mentioned, can, you know, it's a new term, and so finding these creative ways to communicate the message. And so we had a bike library volunteer help us craft this logo. So I just wanted to share it with all of you guys in case you see it again. Next slide, please. And then a little bit about the planning process. So it was similar and different in a lot of ways to the NCJC planning process. The difference is, you know, Iowa City Bike Library is in the middle of this capital campaign, and so we wanted to kind of, as much as possible, weave these planning processes together, right? Because a lot of what was coming up in the capital campaign, and I'll let Audrey talk about kind of the planned upgrades, matches with resilience, specifically as it relates to power. And, you know, as much as you can, especially with small staff, it's always good to make plans connect with one another, so then it's not, you know, 10 different plans that all are separate that you have to find a way to blend together. And then a key part of that, too, is meeting with some of the programs that the Bike Library runs, so Women Trans Femme Night, the Outspoken Teens, as Audrey mentioned, and then it's on the screen, Mujeres en Bicis, which is, I think personally, just an exceptional program. I feel like I've said this to you directly, but I'll say it again. I just love like how this program was born, as I understand it, at least from, you know, teaching youth how to ride bikes and moms wanting to ride alongside with their child, you know, and I think that's such a powerful testament to the organization's ability to like meet the need and to be creative and innovative with that. So just wanted to say that to you. And then our zine workshop. So we also got to work with, again, Bike Library volunteers, people who, I don't know if you know this, but people love the Bike Library. And so it was just a great group to work with, super excited and passionate about the organization, sharing this concept with, you know, the rest of the community, and some really cool zine ideas that came from that process. So, and if you ever trying to think of a way to engage multiple different generations in like a creative process, I feel like zines are it, man. So if you want to talk more about that, happy to do so. Next slide. And then we had 3 key focus areas. If Audrey, would you like to get into these, or maybe I'll start and you want to go deeper into the upgrades?
Yeah, you can start.
Okay. So there are 3 key focus areas that kind of emerged from the planning process. Unsurprisingly, creating space for the community. So again, a lot of these values lean into what the Bike Library is already doing a very good job of. So, you know, you obviously need a safe and dry space to meet if you want to create community, right? So that roof replacement is going to help with that, as well as some of the power sustainability upgrades planned. And then, of course, electrical upgrades, building electrification, so really trying to tap into that power, of those 5 foundations, that power piece of it in this piece, as well as the social infrastructure and resilience component as well, because again, those infrastructure pieces are foundational, right, to being able to have that space to meet. Nurture grassroots values. So something I loved about the bike library was that it's this very much like if you have a vision and you have the energy, you can make it happen. There's not as many spaces like that in this world as I would like there to be, and so I love that this emerged as a key focus area. And with that, it's continuing to expand these pop-up repair events, right? So you mentioned that these really are focused for getting the kids' bikes, road ready. And so again, meeting some of our most vulnerable biking populations, right? Like if you don't know how to bike, where do you get that information? And so these pop-up events maybe get the kid engaged in the subject matter, but then also it helps through Mujeres en Bici is a great example of that. It helps the parents also kind of buy into the mission. And then of course, sustainability upgrades. How many people have been to the bike library? Okay, who hasn't been? Yeah, who hasn't been is maybe the why? No. Well, definitely go because it's an amazing place. And what have you noticed about where the bike library sits? What's around that building that might be important to water? There's a lot of cement, right? There's not a ton of green space, right? So what are the rainwater harvesting potentials in that location, which also then provide a model for the other, it's not the only building there, right, that can maybe explore some of those opportunities. So being an example for that local neighborhood and the community as a whole. But I know that there's some super exciting stuff planned coming up soon.
Yeah, we've always wanted to operate out of a facility that reflects our sustainability values. Values are equity, education, community, and sustainability. And so this spring, in the next 2 weeks, I think, we will be tearing off and putting on new shingles in preparation for our 80-panel solar install, which is very exciting. And then we'll be working with the electrician to do a electrical upgrade. So we're getting a new panel installed, and hopefully by the end of the year, plug it all in and have it be fully operational. We're also working on the design phase. I feel like we've been working on the design phase of our outdoor redesign for the last 4 years since we moved in, but we're still at square one with that. But that's how it goes. Plans have changed a lot as we've worked with lots of different consultants, engineers, architects, and board members, staff, and volunteers who kind of like share and begin to understand what our vision is for the space and the property. So we will be hopefully, by the end of this summer, have a more firm design of the outdoor space and how it all functions with the indoor space. Yeah.
I'm not good at advancing these slides.
No, that's okay. And then, yeah, I think this is the last one. So just a reminder, this is number 2 of the hubs in the city of Iowa City and Johnson County, and I personally hope that there will be more. Something that I hope that comes across, kind of for those of you who had the benefit of seeing the last presentation too with NCJC is how different these organizations are and really how different their areas of focus end up being. And so, it's all sustainability work, it's all climate action work, but even within the same city, right, it's very different. And organizations that know each other, that talk to each other, that partner. And so I think it highlights, the value of of resilience hubs and the inherent foundational model that they are based off of the needs of the communities that they are in. And, you know, I know funding will always continue to be a challenge, especially now for local governments. And also, you know, I hope that this is something here and in other parts of the state we are able to prioritize. Yeah, so consider me a resource to help to do that, and thank you again for the opportunity to carry out this project. Thank you, Audrey, for the trust in me for the project, and yeah, I just couldn't be more grateful about the work that's happening here and the chance to do it with you all.
Well, thank you for taking the time to come share it with us.
And for everything you do. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Tam or Audrey before we move on? Just so you're familiar with the process, for those of you who are new, as part of our Resilience Hub project, we, for the first year, engaged in this planning process to identify the goals and what are the key resilience aspects. And now that that plan has been completed and they've presented to you, we'll move into phase 2, where we'll provide $50,000 in funding this year and next year to help fund the projects that were identified in the plan. And the first one will be helping with the roof replacement and that solar install. So now's your chance to ask any questions before we sign the big check.
This is Harrelson. I was curious, so you talked about installing the rain barrels. What type of, and you talked about the concrete in the area, what type of green space are you putting things in? Are you doing plantings? What are you going to use those rain barrels to support, I guess?
That's all part of like the design that we're trying to figure out. So we had 3 different tiers, 3 different like levels of green space and design that we had like envisioned would be a good upgrade. And you know, our big dream was to do a bioswell, and we can't do that. We tried to figure out how we could do that for years, and there's no stormwater along the road, so we can't tile into it, and therefore it might not work as effectively as it could, and they are expensive to build. So rainwater harvesting is another way that we want to address stormwater. And we wash a lot of bikes. It's the #1 way to fix your bike is just to wash it. And so we wanted to do a rainwater harvested bike wash. So a large tank with a pump on it so we can get some pressure. And then as far as like introducing green space other than just a 5 by 3 foot little easement, we are exploring different ideas for that. So do we want to do tree trenches and cut into the concrete and put in a couple trees in the middle of our courtyard that we share with the city building, where the garbage trucks sleep at Refuse. We share a space with that building. Do we want to do very large planters and put trees in those so that we don't have to worry about the concrete cracking due to roots in the next 10 years, and we can move them around with a forklift based on what events we're having out there? And of course, the stormwater would go towards watering those things. Do we want to do vines that climb up different things just to add green to cool down the space, because it is a big piece of concrete. But then we want to make sure that the line of sight of the whole third space is very open, so that there's not like a whole, we don't want people to necessarily be there overnight. And so there's just so many different factors going into it. Yeah, so if you see any like beautiful ideas, we're still in the idea phase.
I've got to leave in a couple minutes, so if nobody minds, I might ask one more. With the solar panels as well, have you looked at or thought about or talked about any battery storage to complement that system?
We have thought about it. We aren't doing anything about it right now.
Cool. Always an option for the future.
Yeah.
Cool.
The batteries were gonna cost like as much as the electrical upgrade and the panels themselves, so there are other things that we have that we wanna do. And, you know, if we raise over $1 million, that might be something that we could prioritize then.
This is Borg. I'm just wondering, what do you use your electricity for the most? Like, is it just keeping the lights on, or is that part of the mechanics of the bike area?
We have a compressor, and we've switched all of our lights to LEDs. We have lots and lots of tube lights. We have a large compressor. We don't use a ton of electricity except for when heating. So we have gas heat right now. Well, we did have gas heat. We've switched to half of the building being electric. And then we have another heat pump mini split that we'll be installing. So then we'll be fully electric. And then that will be the majority of our energy use.
And then we'll have the minutes show that Angie Smith is now our acting chair. Any other questions?
I guess I have another one.
Yep.
So I was going to ask about the design for like the green space and everything. Is that where the current cement is, where people test out their bikes, or would they just go hand in hand, or how do you envision that?
Yeah, so the reason why we bought the building is for that area, for that test ride loop. So that is the main use of that courtyard area when we're open, which is 15 hours a week to the public, and then like 25 hours a week if you include our programming. So it is going to be dual purpose. It is something that we're thinking about. Like, do we want, when people come in for public bench, we have 6 benches that are currently available. Between May and September, it's not uncommon to have people on a wait list to use public bench. It gets a lot of use. So do we want to open up 3 more benches? Is that going to be outside? Is that going to be in the back bay of our facility? If that's the case, who's going to staff it? Are we going to have some sort of volunteer certification that, volunteers can go through? Because maybe we don't want people working on their bikes right next to people test riding bikes for the first time, and having that like traffic overlap. But the test ride loop is the main kind of like component to the educational piece out there. As we develop our youth programs, we will likely see an increase in having kids coming to us, as opposed, like, we've always gone out into the neighborhoods. We work with neighborhood centers of Johnson County to do littles education, but we might be seeing more kids coming to us, and how do we use that space? But then, on a Friday night, or for a barbecue, or for a outdoor concert, we don't need to use that test ride loop. We can change the space and how we use it. So I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, cool. Thanks for asking.
Looks like you answered the questions pretty thoroughly. Thanks so much for coming and talking about this. It's really exciting to be moving to phase 2. And,
Thank you, Sarah.
And we'll look forward to giving you updates as the projects progress.
Okay.
Okay, it looks like we can move on to new business.
All right, so we're going to begin the reprioritization process for the Climate Action Plan. I know we've been discussing this in our last few meetings, and you received an email from me about this process. I want to emphasize that we're going to take our time with it, so please don't feel any pressure. Like, we fully anticipate starting the process today and continuing it through our next meeting. One of my favorite poems is by Mary Oliver, and she says, you know, things take the time they take. How many roads did St. Augustine have to walk before he became St. Augustine? This will take the time it takes, but the value is in the process. So what we're going to do today is begin by going through the report that we generated that looks at everything we've done related to these items for the last 5 years. And our goal is to replace the status line with a prioritization designation. So, you know, when you normally get the spreadsheet from us, it'll list each item as being long-term ongoing or underway or deferred. And we're at a point now, we've been working at these for 5 years, the plan ran through the end of 2025, where most all of the items are long-term ongoing. And that does not actually tell us a lot in terms of, you know, one thing may be long-term and we may be working on it every month. Some things may be long-term and we're working on them as opportunities present themselves. So what we want to do is ask you in your capacity as a representation of the community to help us figure out what are our highest priorities. Like, what are the things when we look at this list that we've been working on that we want to continue to grow our efforts in those areas, and those are going to be the highest priority items. What are the things that we feel like we're doing a pretty good job and we want to maintain the same level we're at? Those will be our medium tier priorities. And then the lowest tier are ones that maybe for a variety of reasons we are in a holding pattern on them and we want to have some idea about what we would do if an opportunity presents itself, but it's not something we're necessarily actively working on at this time. And I want to give you some examples to help think through this. So when I think about these things, one of the items that comes to mind is community solar, right? That's sort of been a pending item for us because we don't have enabling legislation in place to be able to pursue a project like that. So my guess is that's probably one we're going to continue to be in a holding pattern in. And one of the things that we want to think through is, does that holding pattern mean that when the legislation comes about, then we'll start formulating plans about developing a community solar program? Or do we want to now be using some time to come up with those plans so that when the legislation gets passed, or if it gets passed, we know the location where we want the community solar to go, we know the partners we want to work with, we've got some shovel-ready plans to enact rather than waiting to come up with those plans when the opportunity arises. And there are good reasons to take either approach, right? It could be that we think it's a long-term enough prospect that it doesn't make sense to make a lot of plans now that we're going to have to reformulate 3 or 4 years down the road. Or maybe we just really want to be ready because we think like the window will be very brief. You know, there are many reasons why we could do that. So what we're going to do is go through these one by one and give you each an opportunity to ask any questions you want about where we're at, what's working, what's not working, what would staff recommendations be, or to voice your recommendations on them generally. And then each of you on your own will designate it either as a 1, a 3, or a 5. You give the most points to the highest priority, you give the least points to the lowest priority. We will gather these up when the process is completed and average them together and bring them back to you and say, here's how they sort of sorted out with the tiers, and we can make any adjustments at that time. We can be like, this one was on the cusp, it got a medium tier, but we really think it should be a top tier prioritization. So it's an iterative process. There's going to be many opportunities to work our way through it. The other thing I will say before we get started is a question did come up. Thank you, Robert, for raising it about the benefit cost analysis. And we did look at doing that to try to assign some preliminary numbers. And one of the things we realized very quickly with it is some of these categories are so broad, right? If we just look at the first one about promoting energy efficiency, that could be a low-cost activity if we're just putting utility inserts in every so often, being like, remember to turn off the lights, right? Or it could be a high-cost activity if we're hiring in a professional who's going to interface with all the commercial businesses in Iowa City to identify what their best opportunities for energy savings are. So rather than try to assign a fuzzy number to it, we realized what we should do is continuing what has already been the practice of this body, which is when we have a specific project to bring it to you with that benefit cost analysis to determine whether that specific project should move forward. And an example of that would be the wastewater treatment methane capture system, right? When we wanted to move forward potentially on that, we hired an engineering firm to do that cost-benefit analysis. We brought it to the commission. You all voted on it. When conditions changed, we had it reanalyzed. We brought it to you two again. You voted on it so that you have that information at the time that those major decisions are being made. But in many ways, one of the revelations for me when we realized, like, oh, it doesn't make sense to do a lot of attaching estimated costs to these on the upfront, is that really what we're looking for is your guidance as community members as to where the community priorities are. And if something's a high priority, it's worth knowing it's a high priority, whether or not it costs a lot of money. In some ways, we're asking you to help us figure out what are the directions we most want to grow in, and then staff can figure out how to fund things. That actually is what we're hired in to do. So does that make sense? Does that give us enough direction to move through? Okay, great. So why don't we start with the first one? Speaking of items that can mean a lot of different things, and that is to promote energy efficiency and performance tips to the public. And what we'll do is just pause, and I know you all had a chance to read this. You can read through it again. Give you an opportunity to ask any questions, and then when we're done with the questions on this section, I'll have you all jot down your score for this one, the 1, 3, or 5, and then we'll move on to the next one. So, are there any questions I can answer about our energy efficiency promotion efforts?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking at results in terms of what the results of these are. Is there anything measurable in any of this in terms of what it produced?
We have some rough numbers on some of these initiatives. We've been able to measure participation in the insulation grant program. That would be something that's measurable there. We do keep track of like how many contractors we engaged at the contractor engagement events. We can talk about how many households we've reached with the Energy Blitz, and we do a rough calculation on greenhouse gas emissions saved. That's always a little tricky to do, but we can do some basic estimates on what the impact of those events are.
It just seems to me that those should be elevated, the ones that have performance measures that actually, like there's, I can see where promotion could be a thing in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And that would have a low bar, because what it does is it keeps the conversation in existence. It puts it in the community and people are talking about it. So, I would give it a low bar, like 1, keep it going with opportunities, whatever, because unless there's some kind of a measure, it's promotion.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, where does it host a contractor engagement? And so then my next question is, what did that then produce?
Mm-hmm. And it's such a great question, because some of these things don't have direct impacts. Can we say, because we hosted that contractor engagement, we had X number of heat pumps installed? We're not able to track that. But are we going to get heat pumps installed if we aren't talking to contractors?
Exactly, promotion.
Right,
So
not at all. So in that level, some of these things aren't easily measurable, but I would encourage you to not think of that as meaning they're not important, right? Some of these are things we have to lay the groundwork for. And I will say, as someone who's lived with this plan and worked with it, one of the things I've come to really value about Iowa City's Climate Action Plan specifically is the flexibility it has given us to pursue those opportunities when they arise and to really think about, like, what's the groundwork that needs to get laid in order to achieve our goals by 2050. You know, the other thing I was going to start out saying here is when I first was hired in, I was like, oh my God, 65 actions, it is too many, right? If we concentrated on each of these items and tried to give them equal weight, we would work on each item 3 or 4 days a year, and then we would have to move on to the next one, right? But I have come full circle on this and have come to really value that it is so broad and there are so many items, because when those opportunities arise, when we connected with the Midwest Heat Pump Collaborative and they were looking for a place to come and train contractors, we were able to move on it because we had an item in our climate action plan that empowered us to do so.
That produced a result that you have, right, that you
In terms of the number of contractors trained.
trained, and then it goes on from there, right? I just, the reason I wanted to bring this up early, because it comes up time and again throughout this list, is that it just seems to me that the way you presented the rating is that a 1 isn't necessarily low priority.
Correct.
So I'm saying it's important, but a 1 is as needed, and you keep it going, and the bar is low, and you're not looking at performance measures. And the reason I want to say that is there are some things that you do want to look at performance measures, right?
Yes,
But
but let's not
this.
get that far ahead. Like, first, we want to figure out where the priorities are, and then
Exactly.
we'll come back and think about what are measures we might attach.
Because I don't know how to, I really don't know how to give it any rating at this point until I'm actually clear about what we mean by that.
Okay.
I wonder if it might be helpful to go through each section and look at all of the items within the section, like
Okay.
all of the education things, and then maybe you can prioritize
Figure out which feels like the highest priority in
within
that
that
section. Yeah. And again, you know, another way of thinking about it is I think it's really easy to overthink this, and I will say this as someone who's spent time thinking through this process and what does it look like. And if nothing else, if you feel yourself stuck, ask yourself, is this something that we want to maintain? Is it something we want to grow? Or is it something we want to monitor, right? And so maintain's a 3, grow is a 5, monitor is a 1.
So then what are the years? How do we're not really assessing, this is what you did in these different years, but what we're really assessing is the BE-1, whether
Correct.
to do that.
Correct. Yes, so the years are there to give you a little history, so that we can talk about what worked or what didn't work, or like, this one seems to be going well, this one seems to be a little off course. You know, as you're thinking about, is this something we want to monitor, maintain, or
Okay.
grow?
That clarifies it for me,
Okay.
because we're not rating 2020 and 2021 and the next thing and the next thing and then.
No, we're just rating each action item. So, that being said, are there any questions I can answer about promoting energy efficiency and performance tips to the public? Or do you feel like you have a sense of how you would rate this as something to monitor, to maintain, or to grow? All right, I'm not hearing any questions, so we'll move on to the next one. Partnering with stakeholders to promote green building construction and rehabilitation. I'll just say the biggest item we have on this is really getting to that HERS incentive program in some ways. But there are, if there are other things that you think we could be doing, that would be one maybe to, well, it's up to you how you want to rate it. Do we have any questions about it?
I was wondering if the rating is shown in MLS now?
It is shown in MLS now, which is really wonderful.
Have you heard any stories or feedback from realtors about it?
We've heard a few things anecdotally here and there. We're actually going to be doing another lunch and learn training with the Realtor Association later this month, and hopefully I'll get some intel there. I've actually learned more about the headaches of the software platform for the MLS system than the green ratings, but. So that one, of course, relates to the encouraging local realtor community to include energy performance, BE3. And that's one, now that it's in the MLS, if there are other things we would like to do on top of it, in some ways this one, if we think about it just as getting it in the MLS, we could think of it as completed. Staff have not taken that position. We have continued to work with the area realtors on continuing education opportunities. And if we see value in that, that might be something you would put down as a maintain. If you're like, great, we achieved MLS, what else could we do? If that's one you want to grow, then you would put it down as a grow with a 5.
Sorry, I jumped the gun on that.
Oh, no, it's all right. In some ways, maybe it makes more sense just to ask, are there any questions about the education section? I'm realizing now. So do we have any other questions then about educating the community on energy usage for water treatment and delivery? Or incorporating an education component into future solar installations?
I just have a question about the previous couple.
Yeah.
What exactly is MLS?
Oh, this is a great question. I learned this through this job. It's the multiple listing service. Basically, anytime a realtor is engaged to sell a property, that property gets listed on the MLS, and it has different categories. So you'll see it'll list how many bedrooms are in it, what kind of heating system it has, what's the square footage, does it have a basement, things like that. And so this item was about getting them to include things like average energy costs, does it have high efficiency mechanical units, things that are directly related basically to the energy profile of the home. Very few cities have that included in their MLS. And this one, I will also openly say when I started, I was like, I have no idea how to achieve that. And it's actually been a really rewarding project to work on because we've learned so much about it and been able to move things so far forward. But I would also say that's an example of one that we're lucky it was in the plan because the MLS is only updated every 20 or 30 years, and we just happened to be present at the right time. And we were able to open that conversation. There's nothing in the Climate Action Plan that talks about offering trainings for realtors, but when we were trying to get our arms around how to do it, we were like, well, maybe let's start with trainings, and that opened the door for us. So when I think of and talk about the flexibility of our plan, that's one I often hold up as an example. Were there other questions you had, Emma? You said you had a couple.
Oh, no. I'm
Okay.
Thank you.
And that, by the way, for me, when I read that, that's a major accomplishment.
And that we've been able to maintain such a positive relationship since then is huge, Do you all feel like you have the information you need on this section to give your scores? Do you want to do that now or like quietly? I mean, you don't have to say I'm voting this way in this one, and if you want to note it down in your notes.
Yeah.
And then I'll put my old teacher hat on and say, make eye contact with me when you're ready to move on.
Are we gonna go down the whole list or like
Yeah,
right now?
we'll go to incentive items next.
Okay.
Once everybody's assigned their scores.
Gotcha.
All right, do we feel ready to move on to incentives? All right. So in the incentive section, and these are things where we would offer financial incentives or other, we have BL1, or BI1, I should say, offering free home energy assessments through Green Iowa AmeriCorps. And there is something I'll note here on this particular one. We included costs specifically for this one, how much it costs for the team, and how many team members we get year over year, because those costs have been growing and the team members we've been getting have been shrinking for that. One of the things we've been wrestling with as staff is whether to continue partnering with Green Iowa AmeriCorps or if it makes sense to try to create a part-time position of someone who would just be dedicated to doing home energy audits. As you're thinking about scoring this one, we would just ask that maybe you give a little thought to that question. If you all have a gut sense, we would love to get you to weigh in on that question as well. So maybe when we talk about reprioritization, and there will be a couple later on, we'll talk about this, some of it could be a slight tweaking too, right? Like, is it important that we continue doing these home energy assessments regardless of who does them? You know, should it just say offer free home energy assessments to Iowa City residents? Or do we continue to say offer free energy assessments through Green Iowa AmeriCorps?
So are you saying with the current language used, giving it a 5 wouldn't be cost effective?
No, I think it could be. I guess in some ways what we're asking for is like a score and a little thought beyond that. One is, do we want to maintain or grow the current home energy audit program, right? Do we want to maintain it as is? If we're looking to grow it, then we probably need to be thinking about additional staffing to be able to do that. And so if you have a note on that, feel free to include it. Or if you feel very strongly that Green Iowa AmeriCorps is a very valuable program and we want to continue partnering with them as long as possible, that is worth noting as well. I'm probably confusing you more than helping you.
Well, one question I have about that is that I'm just wondering why it has to be free rather than sliding scale.
People won't do it if it's not free.
You sure
Has
of
been
that?
our experience, yeah. Has that been the experience at Mid-Am when they did free home energy audits? Do you know?
Well, I guess at Mid-American, the one I'm familiar with was more about energy usage, where they tried out a program where people could put something on their meter and you could see what your energy usage was when you flipped off a light, when you used energy. And I did it because I thought it was great. It was really interesting information, but then they set out a follow-up saying, would you be willing to pay extra to have this? And I think it was a pretty resounding, well, no.
The other thing is, when we don't have to do income verification, it gets easier to offer it to all kinds of people.
Okay.
There's not a stigma attached to it, and we don't have to dedicate staff time and resources to doing that income verification and maintaining those records. We can just say everybody gets it.
Okay. Clear.
Yeah.
On the Ford Lightning pickup,
Yeah.
so that's for the Green Iowa AmeriCorps team, or for the city, or?
It's God bless them. The Green Iowa AmeriCorps team has been driving the oldest minivan in our fleet. And when we got EECGB funding last year, we came up with the idea of putting them in a Ford Lightning, both because they desperately need a new vehicle to go to all the places they're going to go, especially as we've expanded that program to not just serve Iowa City, but to serve the county. So it will be a vehicle that's dedicated to them. But we also saw it as an opportunity to just talk about EVs, right? Like, if a crew rolls up in an electric vehicle in front of your home, that invites questions that our AmeriCorps team hopefully will be able to engage in. And it's a little different than having to seek out a dealer to go and see one. So we're very excited about it. We've been waiting for it forever. I don't want to jinx it, but the latest word is it is in Des Moines and on its way to us. So cross every finger. This is where it went bad last time we bought the Lightning, so hopefully it'll arrive.
But it's something that will belong to the city rather than.
It will belong to the city, but it will be used by the Green Iowa AmeriCorps team. I've got where you're going with this now. Sorry.
Yeah, so whoever's doing the audit.
Right. So if we hire someone in to do the audits, that would then become their vehicle.
Sarah, this is Anderson. Just a quick follow-up on what you were saying. So basically, there's two parts to this question, it sounds like, on this one. And I think I understand, I just want to make sure I do. There's the offer free home energy assessments, regardless of who's doing it. But then there's also the question that you're curious about, of should it be through Green Iowa AmeriCorps specifically? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And
And
part,
does that matter?
yeah. Part of the reason I'm asking is if we create a staff position, we would essentially need you all to say that you're on board with us creating a staff position.
I guess one follow-up to that. Is there a disadvantage currently to doing it through Green Iowa AmeriCorps, or are they endangered somehow? Is it just kind of unreliable, or yeah?
That's a little tough to speak to. It does feel like the program has experienced some funding setbacks. I mean, like all programs that have any kind of federal funding connected to them. It is a really valuable program in terms of job training. We don't have to train the AmeriCorps volunteers who come, or members who come in home energy audits. They get trained through the state. But they do also come with increasing other requirements on them as well. In the last several years, they've come with a requirement attached that they plant a certain number of trees, but that funding is not provided for those trees, nor are locations, so it's left to cities to figure out how to meet that requirement. They have a community education component that they have to do each year. And that's really up to you all if you feel like there's value in it. Or do we want someone who just does energy audits and the education they do is connected to energy audits and not, endangered species or, it's really in some ways a question of like how broad do we want those activities to be or how focused? And there are pros and cons to both.
Okay, thank you.
And we can always circle back and talk about that one in more detail if you'd like.
This is Shetty. Are the requests for energy audits consistent and in abundance enough to justify a part-time employee?
We always have a wait list. And I guess I would say one of the other tiny disadvantages of Green Iowa AmeriCorps is historically we've had a period of months in the late summer where we can't perform those audits because one team has completed their term of service. We're waiting to get another team up to speed. And we just we'd lose people off the wait list when we wait on them or when we ask them to wait a couple months for someone to come. So there's that to consider too.
So not to throw shade at Green Iowa AmeriCorps, of course, but it does sound like part of the reason you're asking is because there is a reliability component to this question. Like do we want to continue to do this? And if so, how reliably do we want to continue to do it? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would say, at the end of the day, it comes down a little to like maintaining or growing the program. And also, as community members, Green Iowa AmeriCorps is a key, or is a program that exists in the state that can be supported for a variety of reasons. They do a lot of good work for folks who are early in their career or who are transitioning. And is the importance to us that we're working with Green Iowa AmeriCorps as part of our climate action plan, or is the importance that we're doing these audits with the added benefit of working with Green Iowa AmeriCorps? And it could be that you're like, I think it's great as long as it lasts, and when it's over, then we'd be open to doing something else. Or if Green Iowa AmeriCorps goes away, do we want to stand down our home energy audit program at that time? I think these are questions we're all wrestling with, and we're just asking you all to give a little thought, because probably we'll end up coming to you with a question about this in the next year or two.
Should we assume that a 5 is actually giving priority to hiring a new staff and making that shift, and the 3 is staying with Green AmCorps? Is that the way that the numbers would be understood?
I think to achieve a 5, we probably would need to hire someone. Like if we're going to do more audits than we're doing now, then we need additional resources. And that probably means creating a part-time staff position.
And just to confirm, there are other responsibilities that Green Iowa AmeriCorps volunteer or employees do also. at the
Correct.
city, So it's not the only thing they're doing. Right.
Correct. It's about half of what they do when they're in the city now. Is that a fair assessment? Diane, you were a Green Iowa AmeriCorps member for us. Would you say it's about half energy audits? Okay.
So, one last question, I hope, I don't know if anybody else has them, but one last one from me is there evidence that energy audits lead to lower energy use? Or does it just confirm people and that we're okay? I'm just saying, is there any evidence? What happens after an energy audit?
It depends on the household. There are households that do very well, and it does confirm that that's where they're at. And there are homes, actually, I should say this, that one of the side benefits of doing these home energy audits is we have found a number of gas leaks in Iowa City homes in the last few years. So many that Mid-American's team actually, because the team always calls them to come in and address that, Mid-American has offered to train our future AmeriCorps teams right alongside them in the gas leak detection protocols. because we've just been identifying so many. So there are benefits on that level. The other thing they do when they're doing these home energy audits is they do basic weatherization, and that can be incredibly valuable for households that have leaky windows or doors, or who have their pipes or ductwork is not insulated. Like, our team will go in and do all of that. They will change out light bulbs. And so
I'm
we-
just wondering whether the ones who need it are the ones who actually do this.
Right. And we do, I will say, anybody who participates in our insulation grant program, we require them to get an audit for this reason. They actually have been very helpful. It's sort of like having an ambassador go to the home and talk about the city's programs. Like, they've referred a number of people to our insulation grant program, so they're very helpful on that level. It
Good to
just
know.
depends on, like, the house and the household and what the needs are. But we have seen real benefit from sending people into their homes.
I'm just wondering, is there enough awareness of these free assessments or demand for it to justify adding another staff position for this?
Possibly. And I guess I should say, we don't necessarily have to hire another staff position, too. I mean, we could contract for this with an energy assessment. One of the things we would do is look at what the different pathways are. You know, the EPA estimates 9 out of 10 households are under-insulated. That tells me there's a need, you know, to get more people. And it makes a difference. I will say it makes a difference if someone is in your home, assessing your windows and doors, and taking a look in your attic and saying, here's where the most meaningful interventions are for you, versus just reading a poster on a bus or in the library lobby, right? Oh, gosh, we are at time. Okay. Well, that's where we'll pick back up. Sorry.
This is really educational, I have to say, the process itself.
Oh, I'm glad you like it. Did everybody put their name at the top of their score sheet?
We're not done, are we?
We're not done, but if you wouldn't mind writing your name and leaving these sheets in place before you leave today, I'll collect them back up and make sure you have them again at the start of the next meeting.
The whole thing?
The whole thing, so it doesn't get lost.
I haven't been doing the,
It looks like next on the agenda is public input, which I don't think we have.
So we'll just confirm that the next meeting will be May 5th from 4 to 5:30 in this location. Actionable items, I would just ask that you continue to think about these building items, and we'll pick up the discussion again when we next meet. And then we just need a motion to adjourn.
Shetty moves to adjourn.
Anderson, second.
All right, thank you all for the start of this process.